Oh, it's freezing cold, but you have to make some sacrifices for a great YouTube video. Today we want to photograph the super moon and how you can get amazing photos of the full moon you see in this video. It's minus 4 degrees, but it feels like minus 20 degrees, and that's because of the full moon today. We don't have any clouds at the sky, which is a perfect condition to photograph the moon. What most people do wrong now, they take their cell phone and they go in the camera mode and they point it up in the sky and they snap the image, boom! And what they get is a nice bright point with a blurry image. It does not look like a nice full moon image. But what is the mistake? It's the focal length. One thing you can keep in mind, the further away something is, the longer your focal length has to be, that it's big on your image, on your screen, on your sensor, on your SD card, whatever. So that the moon is big on your image, you need a long lens. In my case, I have a 70 to 200 millimeter lens. It's available for every camera. You can use whatever camera you want. I, in my case, use my Sony. It's an A7R II. It's a full frame camera, but we will see that full frame in this case is not the best option to choose, but I do it anyway because I don't have another camera with me now. But you can take whatever camera you want. Important is that the lens has something like 200 millimeter, maybe even 300, 400. If you have a long lens, you have an advantage. So what I do now, I go on 200 millimeter. I put on the autofocus, so it's not a problem to photograph with the autofocus. And I just look through the camera, and now I just point and focus on the moon. And now I just go on the following settings. I take f8, then I go on ISO 200, and then I go on 1/640th of a second. And I focus on the moon. And the great thing is, you can do it handheld. You don't need a tripod. Why I use the tripod, I will tell you later. But this shot here, you can do handheld. So focus on the moon, take the image, and boom, done. Now one great thing, full frame and APS-C. I won't talk too much about those both things, but this is a full frame camera. So when I take the image of the moon, let's do it, it looks like this. I have APS-C simulation in the camera, so the sensor now is cropped, just like with APS-C, and we can see how different, with the same focal length, it will look now. As you can see, I'm much closer with APS-C. So in this case, you have an advantage when you use a cropped sensor APS-C camera. That wasn't too hard, was it? And now we try the more advanced technique. I just attached my camera now to my longer lens. This is usually my wildlife lens. It's a 300 millimeter 2.8 lens by Sigma. It's an old lens. I bought it for around 1,500 euro used a few years ago, but it's still an amazing lens. It does not have a good autofocus and it does not have an image stabilizer. That is the disadvantage, but I will make some amazing photos with that anyway. And what I have as well is a 2x teleconverter. It looks something like this, something like a lens, and I use an old Canon converter, and this is also a Canon lens, and I have here an adapter for the Sony camera, and I now put it all together. It looks a bit crazy, but it will work in the end. And what it does now, I have 300 millimeter here, and I have a 2x converter, which means 2 times 300 millimeter, so 600 millimeter on this camera. I mounted everything on a tripod. You don't have to mount it on a tripod, but it's much easier to get the right framing of the moon because it's very fast moving, and you will see it when you have your camera on a tripod, and the lens is heavy and everything is heavy, and when you shake a bit, you might get a blurry image. That's why I use this tripod here. Now I have to find the moon, and sometimes it's quite difficult to find the moon with a longer lens. But here it is. I now tighten the screws There it is. And now comes the tough part, because I don't have autofocus. You can use autofocus if you have, but if you don't have, you can use the manual focus. And I use the magnifier, a digital magnifier. And I can now zoom digitally on the moon and focus. And there you see how super shaky it is. And it's millimeter work. 1 millimeter to the left, 1 millimeter to the right, and you mess up your focus. Now I turn on the 2-second self-timer, because when I would push the shutter, in the moment when I push the shutter, the image gets blurry. And when I have the 2-second self-timer, I press the shutter, then it does dit, and then the image is taken. Look at all those crates or crater, I have no idea what it's called in English, but the hills and valleys of the moon. Look at all the structures and lines, and you can see everything. And now imagine if you would have 1000 millimeter or something. I put on the APS-C simulation on the camera, so it gives me a nice crop. I have 42 megapixels anyway in this camera, so even if I crop in, I still have amazing megapixels. So yeah, it's not necessary to actually put an APS-C camera if your full frame camera has APS-C simulation like the Sony has. Yeah, in this case, it looks amazing. Look at the image. I mean, what else do you want? Oh, and from the settings, I'm totally the same like with the other lens. So I still have f8, I still have 1/640th of a second, and I still have ISO 200. You can take total different settings, it does not matter. All that matters is that the image looks good and it's not blurry. The images are nailed, and quick commercial. If you want to learn more about photography like landscape photography, or if you want to learn how to edit your images with Lightroom, especially for beginners, then check out my course at learnfromben.com. This is my website, and there you got the download courses. And I will give away one of my courses, the Lightroom course, for some of you guys and girls. Just write me in the comments below what exposure settings I used to take the full moon photos. So if you don't know, watch the video again, and if you know, write a comment and win my Lightroom course at learnfromben.com. Good luck, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, hit thumbs up for our cold, freezing hands and feet, and yeah, I see you in the next video. Bye bye, and I take a nice look at the moon. Oh!